This is not only another edition of Time About the Movies, but this is the 1000th edition of Time About the Movies. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 1000th episode of Time About the Movies. I've done 1000 of these shows in 3 years and 1 month. I mean, it's unbelievable. You know, we've covered 19 years almost of movies on this show. It's from the day I was born to where we're currently at today, August 1st, 2008. And we covered 19 years in 3 years and about a month. I mean, we're getting close to that. It's a little bit closer to the month. We're about halfway through that, but still, 1,000 of these videos, man. I can't believe it. I can't believe I've done these for so long. It doesn't even feel like I've done them for so long per se, but I've gotten 1,000 episodes out there. Just absolute perfection, man. Just not even absolute perfection, but just absolutely amazing that we've gotten this far. And you know, we've come so far from you know, starting off on the day I was born, January 10th of 1989, to the point that we're at now. I feel like I've accomplished a lot. I've accomplished a lot here, and most of it is thanks to you guys. You guys have really enjoyed this show, and I've been making these videos. I've done all the compilations you've seen I've done recently, doing monthly recaps of different years, of different months during specific years. I'm currently in the middle of 1991 on those videos. I've done the clipless versions over on the Reviewing Network Live. I put a lot of time and effort into these videos, man, and I mean, I feel like I've accomplished a lot on here. Now, this isn't meaning that I'm going away anytime soon. No, we're going to keep this going until we reach the end date of this, which will still be, if we're going by where we're at right now, considering where I was last year, I think around 2002, we're still about a couple of years away from getting to the end of this here. We're kind of at the halfway mark of where we're at right now, so I'd say about 2 years more. 2 years more time, we'll get to the end of this show. But we still got a long way to go here, and excuse me. And yeah, with 1,000 episodes, you would think that we would have a very good show this week, but not so much this week. We've got 3 movies in particular to look at today, and none of them really are that spectacular. Some of them are kind of unnecessary, some of them are kind of bland and have interesting ideas but don't really work that well. And one you probably have never heard of, but it stars Bradley Cooper in it, so I've already wasted your time with this intro here. I just wanted to let you know that this is the 1000th episode of Time About the Movies. So, anyway, with all of that said, let us go ahead and get started with the actual show. Let's jump into the first one we have here, the biggest new release of the weekend. That's, of course, The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. God, this series went downhill pretty quickly, and not even really quickly. I mean, we're between 7 years between The Mummy Returns and this movie, and by that point, I don't think anybody really gave a shit about The Mummy anymore. And in this one, you have Jet Li starring as the evil Emperor Han, who was cursed by the sorceress Zizhan, who transformed him and his armies into mummies. In 1946, the explorer Rick O'Connell, once again played by Brendan Fraser, and his wife Evelyn, not played by Rachel Weisz, but this time played by Maria Bello, are invited by the British government to take a relic, the diamond, the Eye of Shangri-La, to China. The ancient stone is capable of resurrecting the Emperor Han and pointing the way to Shangri-La and the eternal pool of life. When the couple rescues China, they meet their son Alex, who's apparently aged 15 years since the last movie. I mean, when we last saw him, he was a little kid, but now he's a full-fledged adult at this point. But they find him, who has discovered the tomb of Han, and Evelyn's brother, Jonathan Carnahan, played once again by John Hannah. The O'Connells are betrayed by their friend Professor Roger Wilson, who is associated with General Yang. Yang wants to serve Emperor Han, so he resurrects the mummy, and they head to Shangri-La. The guardian of Han's tomb and Zi's daughter, Lin, tells them the only way to destroy Han are to prevent him from reaching Shangri-La, or being stabbed with or stabbing his heart with a cursed dagger. Excuse me. And like I said, man, like, nobody really gave a shit about the Mummy movies anymore at this point. I mean, there really was not much more you could do at this point. I mean, this feels like a film that was just being made because they were just desperate for some money here. I mean, they suckered people in with this movie. They don't even have the same people back from the last movie. And man, let me tell you something. As much as I love Maria Bello, she ain't no Evelyn O'Connell. I mean, Rachel Weisz made that character her own in the other Mummy movies. But here, she just went from being kind of an interesting character to just a generic lead female character to go alongside Brendan Fraser. I mean, there's nothing about her in this movie that's noteworthy or anything spectacular, and there's definitely a difference between her and Rachel Weisz. I mean, there's definitely two different ways to portray this character, and this one failed miserably at that. And on top of that, you got a director like Rob Cohen, who clearly has a problem admitting the fact that he's getting much older and he should not be doing these type of movies anymore. I mean, this is a guy that still thinks that he's still worthy of making teenage movies. I mean, he was still making teenage movies long after this movie came out. Anyone remember The Boy Next Door, that terrible Jennifer Lopez stalker movie where, you know, you had the guy they were trying to push as his next big actor, Ryan Guzman? But yeah, that's the same director who made this film. And this film here, yeah, it's just not a good movie. It's not a good film at all. The effects in this film are terrible. The comedy is just terribly bad. I mean, everybody in this movie is just giving off, when it comes to the comedy, the cheap punchlines, the three Yetis who act like the Three Stooges. Like, it's just so incredibly bad. It's a terrible movie. It's a film that's absolutely unnecessary, and it just, there was no reason to make this movie at all. This is a terrible film, but I'll give it this. It was certainly much more entertaining than the Tom Cruise movie, and that was supposed to be the start of a new universe of films that, yeah, never went anywhere for obvious reasons. Because, yeah, you can't just expect to just copy and paste what Marvel did and do it in half the time. And, yeah, that's what DC failed at that, and the Dark Universe failed at that, too. So, yeah, Mummy Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, not a very good film, obviously. So, yeah, that's that film. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is Swing Vote. So you have a movie that I was kind of optimistic about when I first saw this movie in theaters. I mean, it's an interesting idea overall. This takes place in November of 2004 in New Mexico, where you have Kevin Costner playing Bud, who's a slacker whose one good thing in his life is his engaging fifth grade daughter, Molly, played by Madeline Carroll. On election day, Bud is supposed to meet her at the polling place. When he doesn't show, she sneaks about and is about to vote when the power goes off. It turns out that New Mexico's electoral votes will decide the contest, and there it's tied with one vote needed recasting, and that's Bud's. The world's media and both presidential candidates, played by Dennis Hopper and Kelsey Grammer, one of them is the current president, descend on Bud in anticipation of his revote in 2 weeks. Can the clueless Bud, even with the help of Molly and a local TV reporter, handle this responsibly? I mean, yeah, there's definitely a lot of good ideas in the movie. The idea that the election for the president of the United States comes down to one single vote from one person. This would be something that should be easily taken care of in a matter of moments. But you know good and goddamn well this would never happen in real life. I mean, we just live in a world where politics are so much wider than you expect it to be, and the fact that it would ever come down to one vote, never going to happen. And even if it's not even with this last election that we had, which, okay, controversial opinion time. I should probably not be saying this, but yeah, I was Kevin Costner in this case here. I was somebody who didn't really care about the election, and I didn't even vote. I mean, I think if you watch me long enough, you know who I would have voted for, but I just didn't want to do it. I just didn't feel like voting for it. Plus, my one vote was not really going to make much of a difference in general, considering who won, and the fact that he won by a wide margin. I'll just say that. So, yeah. So if you want to blame somebody for how the country went, yeah, you can blame me for that. But that's a whole other thing altogether. And I'm just going to convincingly turn the comments off and the likes on this because, I don't know, I just feel like I should do that. But back to the movie. And the movie, I wanted to like the movie, man. There's a lot of people in this movie I really like. Kevin Costner, Paula Patton, Kelsey Grammer, Dennis Hopper, Nathan Lane, Stanley Tucci, George Lopez, Judge Reinhold's in the movie, Chip Eston from Whose Line Is It Anyway, Nana Visitor from Star Trek, Mayor Winningham. A lot of good people in this movie, but just the way that it's handled, man. It's a film that just really, I mean, it's trying way too hard to be a movie where it just really, like, it really is trying way too hard to be, but to figure out which direction it really wants to go to, and it just really falls apart when it is in the worst possible way. It's a film that really should have been something that should have been much more intriguing, something much more interesting. It should have been a much better political satire, or like find a direction where you want to go. Do you want to be a satire? Do you want to be a more serious film? Like, what do you want to be? And It's funny because I think King of the Hill, when they did the episode where, Hank can't decide if he wants to vote for Bush because his handshake was limp, and, he goes to Mexico and he basically tells Luann, who had enlisted as part of the Communist Party and was going to vote, and she ends up calling Hank and asking her, why are you not voting? And it's just like, well, I can't vote for somebody who has a limp handshake. And she gives that nice speech about, what voting is all about. Essentially saying that it doesn't really matter who you vote for as long as you vote. That should be the main, but that did a much better job of trying to get that point across than a movie like this did, which I think really had trouble figuring out what direction it wanted to go, or what even the candidates really wanted to do, because, they changed their opinions to try to appease this one guy, and it really has one of those big FU endings where it's just like, yeah, you can leave it ambiguous if you want to, but I'm sorry, you gotta. This is one of those movies where you can't really do that, because, yeah, it backfires big time what they do here in this movie, and it just didn't work for me. It's just a film that had so much potential with it, with the cast they had here, but it just falls apart with a story that sounded intriguing at first, but just can't decide which direction it wants to go, and leaves it on an ambiguous, figure-it-out ending that really has no idea what the main goal of it was. What am I supposed to take away from this movie? It's just not a good movie, man. It's a film that I had so much more hype for, but it really failed to get its message across clearly. So, yeah, I'll skip on Swing Vote. It's definitely the worst thing I've seen from Kevin Costner, which says a lot, because I've been recently trashing the guy recently for Horizon and all that stuff. I like him. He's a really good actor, but, man, he does some things where it's just kind of like, you just can't do this type of stuff, man. Spending all that money on these bloated blockbusters that nobody is going to go see, like The Postman and Horizon, I have nothing against the guy. I think he's a great actor, but, man, when he picks bad movies, he picks some really, really bad movies. And this is definitely one of those bad movies. So let's go ahead and try to end this on a more positive note. Let's take a look at Midnight Meat Train. This is a very interesting movie in general. This is a film that was supposed to come out with a much wider release, but there was apparently a controversy with Lionsgate Films when they were making this movie, and so they basically gave this a very, very small opening where you probably didn't even know this movie came out in theaters. You probably saw it first on DVD, like a lot of people did. But I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when it was coming to any theaters in general. But this is based off of one of Clive Barker's stories found in Volume 1 in his collection, Books of Blood, where you follow a photographer played by Bradley Cooper who attempts to track down a serial killer dubbed the Subway Butcher, who's played here by Vinnie Jones, and discovers more than he bargains for under the city streets. Also have Leslie Bibb, Brooke Shields, Roger Bart, Ted Raimi. So there's a pretty good list of people involved in this movie. And so what happened was that they were supposed to release this movie in May of 2008. It would have came out the same weekend as The Chronicles of Narnia, but they pushed it back, and they were limited to the secondary market with only 100 theaters, and planned for it to come out on DVD. And it really pissed off a lot of people who made the film, especially Clive Barker, who thought the studio's president was shortchanging other people's films to focus more on stuff like The Strangers, which Drake had a credit on. And so the film eventually got shipped off to DVD and Blu-ray, and kind of faded away into obscurity, honestly. Because when it got shipped off there, nobody was really ever talking about it since then. But honestly, I think they're missing out on something really good. This is a really intense film, and I think having a really good cast that includes people like Cooper and Bibb and Vinnie Jones really elevates the film. And it's really the best thing from Clive Barker since the original Hellraiser. I mean, this is definitely a film that is right up there with the original Hellraiser in terms of a great chilling movie, a really intense film that really keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's a well-put-together film, and I'm kind of disappointed the film didn't get a proper film release in general, because this thing probably would have killed if you released it in the right time period. I mean, this could have done very well around Halloween. Like, if people were looking for a new Halloween movie to maybe not go and see the new Saw movie that was coming out later that year, this thing could have played very well around that time, but sadly, that's just not the way things worked out here. And the film came and went, didn't really go anywhere, and it's a shame because there's a lot to admire about the film. I think it's a very well-made film, and yeah, it's one you should definitely check out. It's a very underrated film. Definitely worth it. Midnight Meat Train. Definitely check it out. So there you go. That's the end of our 1,000th episode of Time About the Movies, and here's to 1,000 more. Coming up on the next episode, we actually get back to some good movies. We had the last 2 weeks were not that great in general, but we have at least a couple movies here noteworthy and actually kind of good. Seth Rogen and James Franco starring in the comedy Pineapple Express, and we also have the sequel to The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants 2. So we'll take a look at both of those movies coming up on tomorrow's show. With all that said, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this and want to see the other 999 episodes of Time About the Movies I've done, you know where to go. Hit the playlist below, check out the previous episode. Also, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, notification button, and the bell, because you get updates on when new videos come out, and we do post new videos here every day. So as I said before, here's to 1,000 episodes, and here's to 1,000 more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.